she said. Don't fall for me. But she was the one who fell first. I knew she was trouble from the way she said my name, like she'd already decided to keep her distance, but couldn't help tasting the sound of it. We weren't supposed to matter to each other. She was twice divorced, mid-40s, sharp-eyed and always in control. I was 24, drifting through odd jobs, restless and hungry for someone to actually see me. And yet, from the first night we sat across from each other, the air felt too small to hold us both. It wasn't a date. At least, that's what she said. She had a glass of red wine, I had a beer, and the conversation kept circling back to the same awkward space between us. She'd lean back, laughing too quickly, like she wanted to push me away with her ease. But then, without meaning to, her gaze would linger. Just a half-second too long. You shouldn't fall for me, she said finally, her voice breaking the silence like a warning shot. She didn't smile when she said it. She looked down at the stem of her glass, rolling it between her fingers. I almost laughed. Fall for you? I barely know you. Her lips pressed together. She didn't look convinced. The truth was, I couldn't stop noticing the little things about her, the faint line between her brows that deepened when she was thinking, the way her shoulders carried both pride and exhaustion, how her laugh cracked when she wasn't trying to sound perfect. And she noticed me noticing. When I talked, she stayed quiet, letting me run on too long. I was nervous, filling the gaps with half-finished stories, but she didn't interrupt. She studied me like I was giving away more than I meant to. Every pause stretched, and in those pauses, I swear I could hear her heart reminding her, too young, too dangerous, too close. The room was too warm, the music too soft, the kind of night that felt designed to test restraint. My beer went flat. Her wine glass sat mostly untouched, but she kept lifting it to her lips just so she had something to do with her hands. Why the warning? I asked finally. My voice was steadier than I felt. Her eyes flicked up sharp, then softened. Because I know how this goes. You think you want this, and then one day you'll wake up and realize I'm not who you imagined. That I'm too much. Or not enough. Her honesty hit harder than any flirtation could have. It wasn't coy. It wasn't playful. It was raw, an unvarnished truth she probably never intended to give me. I didn't answer right away. My hand was on the table, hers close enough that if either of us moved an inch, we'd touch. Neither of us did. The silence thickened until she sighed and leaned back, as if retreating would save her from whatever had already started. Let's just not make this complicated, she murmured. But the way her eyes dropped to my mouth when she said it gave her away. I should have let it end there. I should have stood up, thanked her for the drink, and gone home to forget the pull between us. Instead, I found myself memorizing the way she pushed her hair behind her ear, the slight tremor in her hand as she reached for her glass again. She wanted to be untouchable. But her body betrayed her. And maybe mine did too, because when she finally stood to leave, I rose a little too quickly, as if to follow. She caught the motion, shook her head, and whispered, soft, firm, almost tender. Don't fall for me. I didn't say a word. But my chest was already tight, and I knew, if anyone was going to stumble first, it wouldn't be me. It would be her. The next time I saw her, it wasn't planned. She was leaning against the brick wall outside the cafe near my apartment, smoking even though she told me the week before she was trying to quit. The streetlights carved her face into half-light and shadow, and she looked so far away and thought I almost turned back before she noticed me. But she did notice. She always did. Shouldn't you be somewhere less boring than this? She asked, exhaling smoke with a dry smile. Maybe, I said, stepping closer than I needed to. But apparently this is where you are. Her eyes flicked to me, narrowed slightly, but the corner of her mouth betrayed her. That almost smile. She was fighting herself. We walked inside together, the small cafe almost empty at that hour. She chose a booth in the back, sliding in with the kind of practiced grace that comes from living in your own skin long enough to know exactly how people are watching you. I sat across, but the table felt like a barrier I didn't want. The conversation drifted. She asked about my work, my plans. I filled the silence with half-serious answers about not knowing what I wanted yet, about how people my age were supposed to figure it out. But I felt more lost the harder I tried. She listened without judgment, chin resting on her hand, eyes steady on me like she was hearing more than the words I was saying. Then I asked about her. Her divorce came up, not in a dramatic reveal, but slipped between sentences, like it wasn't worth a pause. 2 marriages, 2 endings, both leaving her with a clarity she didn't want. I don't let people in easily anymore, she admitted, her voice quieter than before. It's easier to keep things simple. But her hands betrayed her again. As she said it, her fingers toyed with the edge of her napkin, folding, unfolding, restless. I leaned forward. And yet here you are, having coffee with me at midnight. Her laugh was soft, almost nervous, the kind that didn't fit the confident image she tried to project. Bad habit, I guess. We both knew it wasn't just that. The air between us carried something heavier than words. I noticed the way she leaned closer when she spoke, how her perfume, warm, faint, unfamiliar, settled into the space around me. I caught myself staring at the line of her collarbone when her sweater slipped slightly, and forced my eyes back up before she noticed. But maybe she already had, because she tilted her head and asked, "What?" in that sharp, teasing tone people use when they've caught you looking. "Nothing," I said quickly. Too quickly. She smirked, then shifted back in her seat, pulling the sweater higher on her shoulder. Distance. Control. The age difference hung between us like a quiet warning. She didn't have to say it. I could feel her measuring the risk, the way people would talk, the way she'd already lived through whispers and judgments. For me, it was curiosity mixed with a hunger I couldn't admit out loud. For her, it was a line she'd drawn long ago, now blurring. When the cafe closed, we walked outside together. The night was cooler, the street almost empty. She wrapped her arms around herself, more out of habit than cold. I should have said goodbye there. Instead, I walked her to her car. At the door, she turned to thank me. The streetlight threw gold across her face, catching the faint tiredness around her eyes, the softness of her mouth. For a moment neither of us moved. She reached out, just lightly, resting her hand on my arm. It wasn't much, just the weight of her palm through my jacket. But it was enough to set every nerve in my body on edge. Her thumb shifted slightly, like she hadn't decided whether to hold on or pull away. I didn't move, afraid the moment would vanish if I breathed too loudly. Her lips parted, as if to say something, but no words came. She let her hand linger 1 second longer than she should have, then finally stepped back. "Good night," she whispered. And just like that, she was gone, leaving me standing under the streetlight with the ghost of her touch still burning against my skin. The third time we found ourselves alone, it wasn't supposed to happen. She was grading papers at the back of the bookstore cafe, her glasses sliding down her nose, hair tied up in a loose knot. I came in only for a coffee, but the second I saw her, I forgot why I was there. "You again," she said when I approached, not lifting her eyes from the page. But the corner of her mouth tugged upward before she caught herself. I slid into the chair across from her. "You sound like you don't mean that." She exhaled, set her pen down, and finally met my gaze. "You make a habit of bothering women twice your age?" "Only you," I said before I could stop myself. The silence that followed was thick enough to hear the hum of the ceiling fan above us. Her eyes lingered on mine just long enough to let the weight of my words settle, then she looked away, too late to erase what had already passed between us. We stayed like that for a while. She worked. I pretended to read. Our knees brushed under the table once, by accident, then again, less by accident. She didn't move hers away. Just as I found the courage to speak, my phone buzzed loudly against the wood. I fumbled to silence it, cheeks hot, but not before she glanced at the screen. My friend's name lit up, someone my age, someone she must have thought belonged in my world, not hers. Her smile faded. She pushed her glasses higher on her nose and went back to her papers. "You should answer that." "I don't want to." "Still." You should. Her voice was calm, but clipped, like she was reminding herself more than me. The distance between us widened in that moment, even though we hadn't moved an inch. I leaned forward. Why do you do that? Her pen stilled. Do what? Pull away every time it feels like something's happening. Her jaw tightened. She didn't answer right away. Then softer. Because something is happening. And it shouldn't. Her honesty made my chest ache. I wanted to reach across the table, to take her hand and prove she didn't have to keep pretending. Instead, I stared at the faint coffee stain on her sleeve, the delicate curve of her wrist. The cafe emptied out around us. A barista swept the floor, the bell above the door chimed now and then, but inside that corner booth, the world narrowed to two people circling a line neither dared cross. When she finally gathered her papers, I offered to walk her out. She hesitated, then nodded. Outside, the air was cooler, dusk settling in. We walked side by side down the quiet street, our hands so close I could feel the heat radiating from hers. Twice, I almost brushed her fingers with mine. Twice, I stopped myself. At her car, she turned to me. For a long moment we just stood there, the distance between us unbearable. She looked up at me then, really looked, her lips parting slightly as though a word might escape. I stepped closer. Her back hit the car door, and neither of us moved. My hand lifted, hovered near her cheek, then faltered. She didn't breathe, or maybe I just couldn't hear anything over the pounding in my ears. Don't, she whispered. Not harsh. Not certain. More like a plea she already knew I wouldn't obey. I leaned in anyway, close enough to feel her breath warm against my skin, close enough to see the flicker of war in her eyes. But just before our lips touched, headlights swept across the lot. A friend of hers waved from another car, calling her name. She startled, straightened, smoothed her sweater like nothing had happened. I should go, she murmured. And yet, before slipping into the driver's seat, her hand brushed mine, just a ghost of a touch, deliberate enough to undo me completely. The kiss hadn't happened. But it might as well have. It had to break sooner or later. We were in her living room, late, too late for just coffee. A movie played muted on the screen, forgotten. She sat curled at one end of the couch, knees tucked beneath her, sweater slipping off her shoulder. I was at the other end, trying to look relaxed, though every part of me felt wound tight. The air between us buzzed with things unsaid. At some point she shifted closer, passing me to grab the remote. Her hair brushed my arm. That one small contact lit every nerve, and before I could steady myself, I turned toward her. You keep doing that, I said quietly. Her brow furrowed. Doing what? Getting close, then pretending you don't mean it. She stilled. For a heartbeat, I thought she'd tell me to leave. Instead, she let out a long, shaky breath. You don't understand. Then explain it to me. My voice was rougher than I intended. Her eyes flicked to mine, then away. You're young. Too young. People would laugh if they saw us together. She swallowed hard. I've already lived through the looks, the whispers. I can't. I moved before I thought, closing the gap between us. And what if I don't care about any of that? Her lips parted. Silence stretched. The movie flickered blue light across her face, catching the trembling in her jaw, the hesitation she tried to bury. You think you want this now? She whispered, voice almost breaking. But someday, you'll wake up and regret me. I shook my head. I already can't stop thinking about you. The words hung there, heavier than either of us expected. She didn't laugh. She didn't look away. Instead, she reached up, slowly, and brushed her fingers through my hair, just above my ear. The touch was light, hesitant, but deliberate. My breath caught. She leaned in, not fully, but close enough that her perfume wrapped around me, warm and dizzying. Close enough that I felt her breath against my cheek. My hand lifted almost without my permission, brushing a loose strand of hair from her face, letting my knuckles graze the soft line of her jaw. Her eyes fluttered shut, then opened again, glassy and conflicted. This is a mistake, she murmured, though her body betrayed her. She didn't pull away. I leaned closer, voice low in her ear. Then let me make it with you. Her hands trembled where they rested against the couch. One shifted, brushing against mine. Fingers lingered, half entwined. Neither of us dared to grip fully, but neither let go. The silence became unbearable. Our faces inches apart, my lips hovering above hers, I could feel the rise and fall of her breath. Every second stretched thin, balanced between desire and fear. Finally, she whispered, almost too soft to hear. If I kiss you, I won't stop. And then, 3 sharp knocks at the door. We froze. She jerked back, eyes wide, as if the spell had been shattered. My pulse thundered. Don't move, she whispered, standing quickly. She smoothed her sweater, pushed her hair back, trying to erase the scene we'd almost created. The knocks came again, louder this time. I stayed on the couch, breathless, skin still buzzing where she touched me. She glanced over her shoulder at me before opening the door, her expression caught between fear and longing. Whoever stood outside didn't matter. What mattered was that for one suspended moment, just before interruption, we had been one breath away from breaking everything open. And we both knew we wouldn't be able to resist much longer. The knock on her door that night was her sister. She stayed only a few minutes, dropping off some papers, chatting at the doorway, yet those minutes were enough for us to shift back into strangers. By the time the door closed, the distance between us felt wider than the whole room. She didn't sit again. Instead, she busied herself with small things, collecting mugs, straightening the throw blanket, moving with the jittery energy of someone trying too hard to appear unshaken. You should probably go, she said without meeting my eyes. I stood but didn't move to the door. Is that what you want? Her hands stilled on the coffee table. A pause stretched. It's what's safe. Something in me cracked. Safe doesn't mean right. Her head snapped up, eyes flashing, but not with anger. With fear. And something else. Then, almost as if against her will, she whispered, You think I don't want this? The air shifted. My chest tightened. She hadn't said those words before, not directly. They hung between us like a confession she'd regret in the morning. You've been fighting it since the first night, I said, stepping closer. Her breath hitched, and she turned away, crossing her arms as though she could shield herself. Because I know how it ends. You'll wake up and realize I'm not enough. Too old. Too complicated. Her voice cracked. And I can't do it again. I can't be someone's regret. Her words hit me harder than I expected. Not because I believed them, but because she did. The shame behind her voice was raw, something she'd carried longer than me. Without thinking, I closed the space between us. She stiffened when my hand brushed her arm, but she didn't pull away. You don't get to decide what I'll regret, I murmured. Her shoulders trembled under my touch. Then she turned, sudden and sharp, eyes wet with unshed tears. You're not supposed to make me feel this way. The words were both confession and accusation. My heart slammed. I wanted to answer, to reassure, but before I could, my phone buzzed again in my pocket. She glanced down, and I knew the name lighting the screen would undo the fragile moment we'd built. It was my friend again, the same one she'd seen at the cafe. Her lips thinned. You should go. No, I said firmly. Not until you understand. You don't have to explain. She brushed past me toward the kitchen, but her hand grazed my side as she moved, the lightest, unintentional touch that betrayed how close she'd come to staying. I followed. It's not what you think. She stopped, back to me. Then what is it? Her voice was steady, but her hands gripped the counter so tightly her knuckles paled. I exhaled, words burning in my throat. He's just a friend. He doesn't know about us. No one does. That word, us, changed everything. She froze, her head bowing slightly, as if the sound alone was too heavy to bear. When she turned, her face was flushed, conflicted. There can't be an us, she whispered. But the way her eyes traced mine, the way her body leaned a fraction closer, betrayed her. I stepped in until only inches separated us. Then why does it already feel like there is? Her breath faltered. The silence between us pulsed, thick with everything unsaid. My hand rose again, brushing a strand of hair from her face. This time, she didn't flinch. Her eyes fluttered closed at the contact, lips parting just slightly. I'm terrified of you, she confessed, so quietly I almost missed it. My chest ached. Then let me be terrified with you. For a moment, she swayed toward me, close enough that I felt the warmth of her leaning into my chest. My hand hovered at her waist, not daring to claim her fully. Her eyes opened, glistening, locking onto mine. If I let this happen, she said, trembling, we can't take it back. Neither of us moved. The air around us hummed with inevitability. Then she stepped forward, closing the last inch, her forehead resting lightly against mine. It wasn't a kiss. Not yet. But it was a surrender. And in that surrender, we both knew, the fall had already begun. Her forehead rested against mine, both of us too still, too aware of the inches we hadn't yet crossed. My hands hovered at her waist, aching to close the distance, but afraid that one wrong move would send her retreating again. The room felt too small, the silence too loud. I could hear the faint hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen, the tick of the clock on the wall, the uneven rhythm of her breathing. Tell me to stop, I whispered. Her lips parted, but no words came. Her body trembled against mine, a hesitation more fragile than refusal. Please, she finally breathed. Don't make me choose. But we both knew the choice had already been made. Slowly, carefully, I slid my hand to the back of her neck, my fingers tangling in the loose strands of her hair. She didn't flinch. Instead, she leaned into me, her eyes closing as if surrendering to something she'd fought too long. When our lips finally met, it wasn't the crash I expected. It was tentative, searching, a question neither of us had asked out loud. Her mouth was soft, uncertain, but the way her hand gripped my shirt, tight, almost desperate, told me she needed it as much as I did. The kiss deepened only for a moment before she pulled back, breath ragged, eyes wide. This is insane, she whispered, her voice breaking. You're too young, and I should know better. Her confession was jagged, raw. But she didn't step away. She stayed close, our bodies still pressed together, her hands still fisted in my shirt as though letting go would undo her. Then know better tomorrow, I murmured, brushing my thumb along her jaw. Not tonight. Her laugh was shaky, broken. She shook her head, but the tears brimming in her eyes betrayed her. You don't understand what you're asking. Maybe not, I admitted. But I understand this. I lifted her hand from my chest and pressed it to where my heart thundered beneath my ribs. I've never felt more certain of anything. She closed her eyes, shoulders trembling beneath my touch. For a moment I thought she'd push me away. Instead, she exhaled a sound between a sob and a sigh, and leaned back into me, her forehead finding my collarbone. Her voice was muffled against my chest. I swore I'd never let myself feel like this again. I held her there, both of us caught in the mess of it. Then don't call it falling. Call it living. The words broke something in her. She lifted her head, searching my eyes, and whatever walls she had left collapsed in that look. This time, when she kissed me, it wasn't tentative. It was fierce, unguarded, the kind of kiss that burned away hesitation and left only truth. Her hands framed my face, pulling me closer. My arms circled her waist, holding her as though I could anchor her against all the fears she'd named. The world narrowed to nothing but heat and breath and the sharp edge of knowing we'd crossed a line we could never uncross. When she finally pulled back, her lips swollen, her chest rising and falling against mine, her eyes held something new. Not fear. Not shame. Something steadier. Now you know me, she whispered. I nodded, brushing my thumb across her cheek. And I still want you. The silence that followed wasn't heavy anymore. It was clarity. A fragile, dangerous clarity, but real. For the first time, either of us pulled away. The night didn't end with fireworks. No dramatic music swelled, No perfect kiss froze the world in place. It ended the way most real things do, quietly, with two people sitting too close on a couch, trying to catch their breath after finally letting go of everything they'd been holding back. She leaned against me, head resting on my shoulder, her hand tangled loosely in mine. My thumb traced lazy circles across her knuckles, grounding myself in the fact that she was actually here, that she hadn't run this time. For a while we said nothing. The only sounds were the soft hum of the TV still playing in the background, and the uneven rhythm of our breathing. Finally, she broke the silence. "I don't know what this makes us. Maybe we don't need to name it yet," I said. "Maybe it just is." Her small laugh was muffled against my shirt. Spoken like someone who hasn't lived long enough to know how messy these things get. I tilted my head, brushing a kiss across her hairline. "Messy doesn't scare me." Her body stiffened slightly at that, then softened again, like she wanted to believe me but couldn't quite let herself. "You'll wake up one day and regret it." "Regret me?" I squeezed her hand. "I already told you. I won't." She turned then, lifting her head to study me. The worry etched into her face hadn't vanished. It probably wouldn't, not overnight. But under it, there was something else. A softness. A kind of fragile hope I hadn't seen before. "You make it sound easy," she whispered. "It's not," I admitted. "But I'd rather figure it out with you than walk away pretending I don't feel what I feel." Her eyes shimmered in the low light. She searched my face like she was trying to find the lie, but all she found was the same restless longing she'd stirred in me from the start. Slowly, she reached out, brushing her fingers along my jaw, her touch light but steady. "You're stubborn," she murmured. "Only when it matters." The tension in the room shifted again, less sharp now, more tender. She leaned in, pressing a soft kiss to my forehead, lingering there longer than she needed to. When she pulled back, her smile was small, but real. "I'm still terrified," she confessed. "So am I said. "But I'm not going anywhere." Her shoulders dropped, a breath leaving her like she'd been holding it for weeks. She slid closer, curling into my side, and for the first time since the night we met, she didn't seem like she was fighting herself. We stayed like that, close, quiet, wrapped up in the warmth of a decision we couldn't take back. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't neat. But it was ours. And for the first time, that was enough.